Hey, and welcome, gurus, to this demonstration lesson where we're going to be implementing an application security group. I'm Chase, one of your Azure training architects here at A Cloud Guru, a Pluralsight company. And as we go through this lesson, we're going to start off with a case study scenario so that we can better understand a time in which we might want to implement application security groups as a solution. And this is going to help us both for the exam and as engineers and architects in our industry. And then we're going to talk about the demonstration steps that we're going to go through in the Azure Cloud Sandbox for our demo. And then we'll round out this lesson with the key takeaways for application security groups and our demonstration. So without further ado, let's get started. For this case study scenario, we have our Control-Alt-Suites organization. And this organization has an environment inside of the Azure Cloud Sandbox that we're working with. Again, we have our Spoke networks as well as our Hub virtual network inside of our Azure Cloud Sandbox. But specifically for this demonstration, we're going to be diving into the Hub virtual network, where we have a Hub subnet. And inside of that Hub subnet, we're going to have an association to our network security group, much like we had in a previous demonstration. And this is already going to have some predefined security rules that are going to be impacting the traffic for two virtual machines that exist within this subnet on our Hub VNet. And what we're going to be having here are rules that deny traffic to our virtual machines. And we're going to go through the process of creating a application security group so that we can use it to allow traffic to a logical grouping of resources that are tagged by this application security group, if you will, to provide intelligence to our security rules so that we can more intelligently implement security rules and have less administrative overhead with our network security groups. Now, as always, whenever it's available for me to do so, I provide the setup available for all resources that will go into the demonstration and the resources of this lesson. So make sure to go to that link so that you can get set up in your demo environment. Now, something that we need to remember is what we're trying to do is think about how we can provide intelligence for logically grouping resources so that we have resources that are impacted in such a way that security rules are aware of the application structure that we have in our networks. As we go through this demonstration, the steps that we're going to take here inside of our Hub VNet is we're going to create an application security group. And this application security group is going to be associated at the NIC level of one of our virtual machines. And we're going to create a security rule on the pre-existing network security group that we have that allows SSH inbound from our Cloud Shell public IP address. And this is going to have the rule destination of the Hub ASG1. So it's going to allow traffic into that particular virtual machine. Now that we've got that all covered, let's make our way over to the Azure portal and get started in the Azure Cloud Sandbox. All right, gurus, here we are inside of the Azure portal, more specifically in our Azure Cloud Sandbox. So make sure you get logged into that Azure Cloud Sandbox so that you can follow along with the demonstration. And once we're inside of the Azure Cloud Sandbox, we need to make sure that we set up a Cloud Shell. So we'll click on Cloud Shell here, and we're going to configure a PowerShell Cloud Shell environment, show advanced settings, and we're going to create a storage account to map to our Cloud Shell instance. I'm going to call mine the ACG Cloud Chase Demo STG. And you make sure to give this a unique name because it is a storage account, so it needs to be unique globally and follow the naming convention for storage accounts. And then I'm going to create a file share inside of that and call it the Cloud Shell. I'm going to create storage, and this is going to go off and create my Cloud Shell instance and map it to this storage account. So we'll skip ahead with some movie magic to when that's done. All right, gurus, so we're back and our Cloud Shell has finished mapping to our storage account. So we'll go ahead and clear up our display. And for your viewing preferences, I'll go ahead and change the text size to medium here. And I'll go ahead and expand my Cloud Shell here to maximize the screen view. Now, I just wanted to say, where possible, when I have the opportunity to, I will show the configuration of setting up a Cloud Shell. For some demonstrations, unfortunately, I won't have the time to do so. And so something that I wanted to make sure that you understand how to do, if you don't already, is set up a Cloud Shell. And this is something that will benefit you greatly in the future, both for just your own personal Azure knowledge as well as professional experience in using the Cloud Shell. So I'll cover it where possible whenever there's time in our demonstrations, as there is in this one. But If you're not familiar with that, there are very simple documentation steps on setting up the Cloud Shell with a storage account. Now let's go ahead and get on with our demonstration. Make sure to go get the resources link for this demonstration in the resources of this video. And we're going to grab this here. We're going to copy it. We're going to bring it back to our Cloud Shell. We're going to paste it in, and this is going to go off and create our environment. So we'll be back once this is done. All right, gurus, so we're back after a little bit of time and our script has finished. So we'll minimize our Cloud Shell here. And what we'll see, if we hit refresh, if you don't already see these resources, is that we have all the resources that were created for this environment. Now, we're going to sort these by type because we only need to look at a few here. We're going to focus on the Hub Virtual Network. So we'll click Type to sort them by type. We'll come down to our Virtual Network. We'll select our Hub VNet here. And inside of this Hub VNet, what we're going to notice inside of subnets under the settings portion of the blade is that we have our Hub Subnet 01. And this already has a network security group associated with this subnet, and this is our Hub NSG1 that we refer to. If we click on this network security group here, what we see is we have two user-defined security rules. One with a priority of 110, allowing HTTP traffic from a source of anywhere to a destination of anywhere. Then we have another rule with a priority of 120, denying SSH traffic into our network. Now, of course, we have this implicit deny all inbound, but the reason I'm doing this here is to show that even if we have a rule where we want to deny specific traffic from a specific source, what we can do is specify another rule with a lower priority to allow from, say, a client IP. And we're going to use an application security group to do that. Which brings us into the first step in our demonstration, creating an application security group. So we'll come up to the search bar here and we'll type in application security groups, and we'll select it under services. Then we're going to click create, and this is going to bring us into the part where we configure this application security group resource. We'll choose our playground resource group. We're going to give it a name here of Hub ASG 01, and we're going to deploy it, making sure that it's deployed into the same region as the rest of our resources here. And we can easily check this by right-clicking on our tab, duplicating it, and then we'll be able to go to our resource group by clicking on Home and clicking on the resource group name. And we'll see all of our resources are deployed in East US. So we know this is good. We'll go back over to the other tab. We're going to run with that East US. We'll click Review and Create. This is going to validate the deployment of this resource. Once it's passed, we'll click Create. It's going to go off and create this application security group for us. Now this brings us into our second step, where we need to associate this application security group with a network interface for our virtual machine. Now, what we'll find out if we go into this application security group is from the resource itself, we don't really have a way to associate it with a NIC. So we'll go back to our other tab here, and we'll go ahead and sort by type. We'll go to our virtual network, the Cake Hub VNet, and then we're going to go to our connected devices. Here we see we have two. We're going to use the Cake Hub VM01 VM NIC, and this is going to actually guide us to the attached virtual machine for this network interface, the Cake Hub VM01. We'll select this VM, and we'll go to the networking portion of the blade under settings, and then we're going to see we have these tabs here for our inbound and outbound security rules for our network security group, but we're going to go to the application security groups tab here. We're going to configure the application security groups, and we're going to choose our Hub ASG 01. We'll click Save, and this is going to modify the network interface to have an association with that application security group that we just created. And because of that, we'll now be able to use that when we're creating a rule. So we'll go to our inbound port roles here, because we can work with our network security group here from this interface. We'll click Add Inbound Port Role here, and we're going to make it a source of our public IP address of our Cloud Shell. So we'll open up the Cloud Shell here, and once this is open, we'll clear up our display, and we're going to paste in that command that we need to be able to get the public IP address of this Cloud Shell instance. We'll paste in our curl command, which I've provided via a link in the resources of this video, and this is going to get that public IP address of our Cloud Shell instance for us. And then we're going to copy that in, and we'll minimize the Cloud Shell here. We're going to use an IP address as our source. We're going to paste in this IP address, make it a /32 because it's a specific IP address. And the destination is going to be our application security group. So we'll select application security group as a destination type. We'll select our hub ASG01, and then we're going to configure this for SSH. We're going to specify a lower priority than our deny rule, which is 120. So we'll specify 100 here. And that's why we need to be super careful of the priority number that we give our security rules, so that we make sure that we leave room for rules to override things that we may not have thought about. We're going to call this our allow SSH inbound. We're going to click add, and this is going to create that security rule for us. I'll come back to the Cloud Shell here. We'll clear up our display. And what we're going to do at this point is get the public IP address that's associated with our NIC here. We'll copy this, and then we're going to type SSH Azure user at and paste in the public IP address. And as we see here, this is making that SSH connection into that virtual machine, and it's asking us to accept that fingerprint. We type yes, hit enter, and then it's going to make that connection into that virtual machine. We'll go ahead and clear up here, and just to validate, we'll type in hostname tac I, and that gives us our private IP address, which we see matches the private IP address that we have here for the NIC of our virtual machine. Now, this traffic would have not been previously allowed because of that deny SSH rule, but because we put in a lower priority, which gives a higher precedence in the order of evaluating these rules for allowing SSH traffic from the public IP address of our Cloud Shell instance to the application security group, which is associated with this NIC for our VM, the traffic was allowed. All right, gurus, that completes this demonstration portion of our lesson. Let's make our way back to the slides for a quick review. All right, gurus, congratulations on following along in the demonstration for this lesson. The key takeaways that we want to understand for application security groups from this demo are that application security groups are used to extend the NSG security rules that we have by providing things like application layer awareness to these security rules, right? So that we can make sure to logically group our resources based off of functionality like web servers, databases, logic tiers of our applications, so that we can make sure these security rules allow us to scale network security for that virtual network without having to create multiple network security groups, and it makes for lesser administrative overhead. And this totally simplifies the traffic control inside of our virtual networks, especially because we're making this NIC level association for each of these resources that we're logically grouping using our application security groups. All right, gurus, that is all for me for now. Thanks so much for joining me in this lesson, and I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.